Are you interested in the special effect sometimes called green screen or ChromaKey and trying to incorporate it into your video production? Then stay with the video. I have some tips that may be of help to you. I'm Dave, Geezer Geek here on this channel, and ChromaKey is a daily part of my work for the 501c3, for which I've been doing videos for this persistent pandemic. Today I'm going to show you my process for getting the best results in my setup. Welcome back to my channel, where I'll be sharing with you some things that you can do with tech. Today I'm going to be sharing specifically some of my setup process for working with video production with ChromaKey in OBS Studio. I am working within a flavor of Linux called Ubuntu as my operating system, but the same processes will work regardless of the operating system that you are using. If you're using OBS, regardless of your operating system, it will likely look pretty similar on your setup. Now, I do have full information about my recording setup in the show notes below. What will be different for you is the exact settings that you use. The settings will be affected by studio lighting setup. See my video on all about the light. That includes not only the light you have set up by way of studio lights, but also the ambient light from things like windows, or light from another room, or light from your monitor or monitors that's providing additional light on you. The settings will also be affected by the exact color and reflectivity of your green screen. Once again, see my video on all about that light. And the settings will be affected by the color and reflectivity of what you're wearing. Did I mention you should see that other video? All that being said, the processes that I have worked out for myself will provide compensation for each of these area of concerns, each of these variables. But you should understand what's going on with the light and why you need to change your settings, perhaps every time you begin to work. So that other video is likely to be helpful to you. In another video, I talked about using my webcam with OBS Studio and how I tweaked my settings for best results. While the settings that I am using lately are different from when that video was made, that's due primarily to changes in my lighting setup, and the principal points being offered in that video do remain valid. Still, I'm going to take you through that process again in this video. Basic camera setup is where we're starting today. For purposes of making this video, I obtained a new edition of OBS. It's 26.1.2. I'm using 26.1.1 usually. But I did this so that I would have a clean setup of OBS without messing up the settings that I was using in order to do my regular video production. This gives a clean start, and we can see it step by step as we set it up. So, working from ground zero, getting going with OBS. This is the welcome window that you will see when you start it. I'm not going to be doing streaming, so I have the wizard optimized for recording. These settings shown here on the second screen look fine, so I click the button saying Next, and the report looks right, so I say Apply Settings. This is how OBS looks when it starts. You'll see that there is one scene available in that lower corner. But we don't have any sources for it, so we do need to add some sources. So what we do is we click plus to add a source. Under Sources, come down here to see that plus sign, click on it, and it brings up this menu from which we will be selecting Video Capture Device. I do like to name my device for easy identification. I actually have a couple of different webcams that I use, And so I like to have them identified as to which one I'm actually working with. I go ahead and I rename the camera, and then I click OK. OBS, you see, does identify my camera. If there is another camera attached, that drop down would have it, but right now there's just the one camera attached. So the next step, in order to get good results with ChromaKey, is to make sure you've got your camera settings good for your setup that's affected by your lighting. You will have different controls depending on the camera you use and what controls they make available to you. And your mileage may vary, perhaps especially on Windows, but I find that these settings work best for me in Ubuntu. First thing I do is I change from the default YUYV, I change that to BGR3. Then, instead of resolution unchanged, I select a lower resolution. What this does, selecting 960 by 720, means that only part of the camera sensor is in use. And now I have pan and tilt effects. Those would be unavailable if the whole sensor were in use. After setting the resolution, I then set the frame rate. I lock it in at 30. After that, I scroll down to the bottom of the screen, and I like to have the LED lit up on the camera when it's running, and so I set that to blink, and I like to set it at a frequency of 10, and that gives a blink rate of about once a second. Okay, scrolling up just a bit, first thing I do is untick that focus auto option, and I make sure that it's not going to be trying to autofocus depending on whatever's happening in front of it. If I go to the higher numbers, everything goes fuzzy. So I lock that in either at 0 or 1. I like to set the zoom in as tight as it will come, and with this particular set of camera settings, that's about 170. I didn't show it to you on the screen, but I do make that setting. Pan and tilt are good for now, don't need to change them. Exposure, I like to set to manual mode instead of aperture priority. Go ahead and make that change. And then this slider, this exposure slider, gives you a control, something like push processing would with the older ISO settings on film cameras. You could set a higher or lower ISO on your camera, and then use either push or pull processing, depending on what you've done, in order to shoot film at a different light than it had actually been designed for. Normally you could only get 1 or 2 stops with film. You have more flexibility with these digital options with web cameras and other cameras these days. But if you scroll that slider, you'll see that it's not an infinite variability, but it actually has stops. Something like setting it at ISO 100, 200, 400, 1000, those ISO settings on your older cameras. Find the setting that gives you the best lighting on the subject, given your lighting in the room. There's actually a range of numbers that still give me that same setting. The backlight compensation option is either set to on or off. On is 1, off is 0. I do not see any difference using one setting or the other. It seems to be an ineffective setting for me. Your mileage may vary. I still do like to change sharpness, set it up to around 160 or 170. And I keep scrolling up now and untick that white balance temperature auto option. That allows you to change the temperature of your picture using this slider and I find that the 4000, the standard, the default setting, the 4000, is a little redder than I prefer. So I normally tone that down into the bluer side of the spectrum by going to a lower number, and I found that 3500 normally works best for me. I have gone as low as about 3000, but usually 3500 is about where I like it. After doing that, I make sure that the power line frequency is set to what we have in our area. Our power is at 60 hertz. In many parts of the world, it's at 50 hertz. Just make this match your power source so that it helps to avoid some flicker. That brings us up to the top of our controls now. And what I normally do is set saturation down just a bit. I think that the defaults oversaturate the color a bit. So I normally pull that down to about 100. And brightness I play with. It depends on the precise lighting situation that I have created for myself and the effects that I'm trying to do with the particular presentation that I'm doing. Sometimes I will tone the brightness down, sometimes I'll raise it up. And so that's what we've done here. So we've raised the brightness a bit. After doing all this, you'll have a screen that looks something like this, showing you what your picture looks like. And there you see my green screen in the background. You'll notice that it is not perfectly uniformly lit. You'll also notice that there are some wrinkles in it, soft wrinkles, and that's okay. The green screen will still work. Take your time working with this menu, this set of controls. Get your picture as good as you can here before moving on to ChromaKey. Time spent here is time well spent, and it'll make your job easier in the long run. Once your tweaking is done, click OK, and adding the ChromaKey filter is next. I've stretched the size of the image from my camera to the full screen height now, filling most of the composition area for my video. By using Alt and grabbing any of the handles, those squares on any of the edges or corners, I can crop the image. When I do so, the cropped edge gets a green border instead of red. We won't do any cropping this time. But right below the image, you see a button that says Filters. Push that button. Right there. The control window that pops up says Filters for C920, so I'm working with the correct filters options and presently have no filters enabled. If I wanted, I could add some filters in that top section where it says AV filters, but the one that's of interest is found in the lower options, Effect Filters. Go to the Add button down there at the bottom of that Effect Filters box. Go to the bottom where it has the plus sign, click on it, and you have a list of possible filters. ChromaKey is the one that we want. I normally see no need to rename this filter. I just go ahead and click OK. And the next thing is the settings that are available for this filter. These are the default ChromaKey settings. It has a default green value and default settings of similarity of 400, smoothness of 80, spill reduction of 100. With your setup, these defaults may work just fine, but I get better results by changing them. You may recall just a little bit ago I showed you that my screen is not uniformly lit. The bright spot is behind my head, and the less lit area is down in that lower right corner. And you can see how ChromaKey is trying to filter out some of the green, but it's not able to do it uniformly with my current lighting conditions. We can fix that. That's what we'll do next. ChromaKey, and we can try sliding the similarity button and see if that will work. And yes, we can get more of the green to go away. But as we do so, we start seeing things we don't like in the rest of the image. We need to make some different changes. As I said, the defaults here are 400, 80, and 100, and the default is a default green screen. We're going to change all of those. We'll start by sliding all of these down to 1. And then we'll change our color. You see there's options there, but we're going to choose a custom color. And you see the color that it starts with is 00FF00, and that happens to be that green at the top of the next to right-hand column on the basic colors. But what I'm going to do is show you these fill boxes, hue, saturation, val, and you can see what happens as you start playing with these numbers. You can control your color very precisely using these numbers. By setting all of those to 0, our key color is black, and that's an HTML number of 000000. We're going to come up here, select the key color that they had originally. Recall that was 00FF00. There it is. Under HTML, you see that number, and you see green is 255. We're going to cut that in half. Make it half as bright. Half as intense. And you see the other numbers change when we do that. And click OK. Now we're going to start sliding our similarity until the green goes away. Keep on going, and other portions of the image start disappearing. You get to that point and you know that you've gone too far. Notice the gray that starts to show up in me there, in my red shirt. That means that I've gone too far and I need to back it off at least 20 to 40 points. We're going to end up right around 240 on this. But you'll see some jagginess around the perimeter of the image we're keeping. We're going to clean that up by using the smoothness control. We're going to slide it up, and once again, watch what it does, and when we start getting an undesirable effect, we back it off. Starting to lose some color in my hair there, so I'm going to back that off to about 24, thereabouts. Key color spill reduction is an interesting control. In this situation, what it can do is take you into a monochrome or a grayscale image. It's kind of like one of the camera controls that we looked at earlier, the saturation. That's not its real intent, I don't believe, but that's kind of the effect that we get here. And so we're going to leave this one really low. There are additional controls here. You see opacity, contrast, brightness, and gamma. These will push and pull against the settings that you've already set with your camera controls. If you've done your work well there, you will not need those controls. And so now you see the finished result of what I've done with the ChromaKey settings. You can tell it's not perfect, especially up around the hair. But with the backgrounds that I normally use, it's not noticeable. I tweak my settings every time and fine-tune it for the backgrounds that I'm using, and the results that I'm getting with my videos are more than satisfactory. I have had a lot of compliments on the image quality of the videos that I've been able to make for the 501c3. So, that's my process for setting up ChromaKey with OBS and getting very good results. So the bottom line is, yes, green screen is an effect. It's something that you can do using the ChromaKey filter option in OBS. You can do this. Have fun with it. And with apologies to the Doctor Who franchise, I won't be seeing you, but you'll be seeing me. I'll be back with another video. Stay curious, keep learning, and stay safe.